Have you ever thought about how the presence of a weapon might influence someone's behavior? There's this ancient quote from Homer, the Greek poet, that says, "The blade itself incites to acts of violence." It's a powerful idea, isn't it? And it's something that feels surprisingly relevant today, especially when we think about gun crime in America. Let's unpack this a bit and see how this ancient wisdom can help us understand a modern issue. So, Homer was talking about a blade, a weapon that in its very existence has the potential to provoke violence. But what if we apply this idea to guns in America today? The United States has one of the highest rates of gun ownership in the world, and not surprisingly, a significant number of gun-related incidents as well. There's a strong argument to be made that the easy availability of guns contributes to these high rates of violence, much like the presence of a blade could encourage its use in Homer's time. Some people believe that just having guns around makes it more likely for people to use them, especially in heated moments. Now, there's also something called the weapons effect. This is a psychological theory suggesting that simply having a weapon nearby can increase aggression. Imagine that. Just the presence of a gun could make someone more likely to act violently. It's like what Homer was getting at with the blade. It's not just about the tool itself, but what it represents and how it can change our behavior. In a country where guns are everywhere, like in many parts of the US, this effect might make violence more likely, just because the option is there. It's a fascinating and, honestly, a bit of a scary thought. But here's where it gets complicated. Some people argue that the focus shouldn't be on the weapons themselves, but rather on the deeper issues that lead to violence. They say, look, guns don't just fire themselves. There are underlying problems like poverty, lack of mental health resources, social inequality, and cultural factors that contribute to why someone might commit a violent act. From this perspective, if you want to reduce violence, you need to address these root causes, not just the availability of guns. It's a compelling argument, and one that shifts the conversation from just controlling access to weapons to solving bigger societal problems. And this brings us to the heart of the gun control debate in America. On one side, you have people who argue that limiting access to guns will reduce violence. They believe that if there are fewer guns around, there will be fewer opportunities for people to use them in harmful ways. On the other side, there are those who argue for personal responsibility and addressing the root causes of violence. They suggest that focusing too much on the weapons themselves might miss the bigger picture of why violence happens in the first place. So what do we do with this? Homer's observation about the blade inciting violence gives us a way to think about gun crime in America that goes beyond the usual arguments. It suggests that while weapons might have the potential to provoke violence, the context in which they exist is just as important. Reducing gun crime in America isn't going to be simple, and it certainly won't be solved by focusing on just one aspect. We need a nuanced approach that considers both the presence of guns and the social and psychological factors that drive people to violence in the first place. In the end, it's about finding a balance. How do we respect individual rights while also working to reduce violence? How do we address the psychological effects of having so many guns around while also tackling the deeper societal issues that lead to crime? These are tough questions, but they're worth asking if we want to make meaningful progress. Homer's words remind us that the tools we create and the society we build are deeply interconnected, and perhaps by looking at both, we can find a way to a safer future.